First. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get started here in about 30 seconds. If you have not done so already and you want to speak to a bill, let me know, or actually don't let me know. Fill out the sheet up front here. And we are going to be hearing House Bill 1221 first, followed by House Bill 1186, followed by House Bill 936. Just some programming notes there. And as soon as you all are done with that sheet in front, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to have you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to go ahead and convene the Education Policy Subcommittee. What I like to do is, before we start any committee meeting here, on the education side, do we have any educators, any teachers in the audience? Please stand and be recognized and embarrassed. No? Okay. She's going to wave. Thank you. Do we have any students in the room today? One student in the back. Love it, love it, love it. All right. With that, we're going to open up in prayer. And number 24, you are blinking, so guess what? You get to pray.
Well, I was going to say that there were 1,000 students up here today. They're just not in this committee room.
I hope they're back in school. Go ahead and pray, Representative Maynard.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for today. We thank you that the students that came up here today arrived safely and that they returned to their homes safely. As we conduct the business of this state as stewards of you, dear Lord, we pray that we have discernment and we make the best decisions for Georgians. In your name we pray, amen.
Thank you, Representative. With that, Chairman Smith, I will hand the mic over to you, and if you'd walk us through your bill.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Bring to you today the substitute to House Bill 1221. I want to thank members of this subcommittee and of the full committee for having worked with us on this. LC number 491849S. What I will do is I will direct your attention to the changes that were made, lines 30 through 35. You'll see that this would require that enrollment of any student under this code section for the ensuing school year shall be completed between April 15th and June 15th each year. And so that basically addressed some of the concerns we had about people leaving for 10 days and then coming back, and making sure that we didn't mess with any of the money that was allotted for that student. Subsection B there, provide for how school capacity to enroll additional students shall be determined, and authorize local units of administration to decline to provide transportation to students seeking to enroll under this code section. I figure that was pretty self-explanatory. You don't want buses having to go 2 counties over to bus a student. And so we also wanted to add in there something that we all thought was very important, even though I understand that it will be prohibited by other code sections, but we wanted to assure non-discrimination on the basis of sex, race, religion, or national origin. So that was the first line right there that had changes. And then I'll direct you to line 48 through 49, starting with however. We inserted that however, that tuition shall not be required for a student if such student is eligible for free or reduced price lunch. And so I appreciate members of the committee that had input on this, Mr. Chairman, and just would ask that y'all give this favorable consideration.
Chairman Smith, thank you so much for that presentation and the changes that you made to the bill. I think it's come a long way since our first sub and improved in a good way. With that, I will open up for questions from the committee. Any questions for the author of the bill? All right, seeing none, looks like we have one speaker invited to speak, Mr. Hawkins with Frontline.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are we on?
You're on now.
Thank you. I just, in the interest of time, I'll be very brief. Just appreciate Chairman Smith's work on this, and expanding opportunities for students to achieve, to access the best education for them individually is something that our organization seeks to prevent. As I forgot to mention, Taylor Hawkins with Frontline Policy. And so we just want to fully endorse the bill and ask that this committee pass it.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. With that, I will entertain a motion on the bill if there is one. I see to my right here, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thanks. Chairman, thanks for this bill. Support it completely, and I'd like to make a motion to do pass.
We have a second. Any discussion on the motion? A call to question. All in favor of House Bill 1221, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? All right, bill passes. We have a full committee hearing right after this.
Yes, sir.
We'd like for this to be heard.
Yes, sir.
If you or another co-sponsor can stick around or come back, we'll have that done.
Yes, sir. I'll run down to health and come right back, but in the event I can't, I know two gentlemen right here, if y'all want to fight it out or play thumb war to pick who does it if I can't make it back.
As long as it's not mud wrestling, I'm good with it. All right.
That's a professional sport in Haralson County, Representative.
Yeah, that and cockfighting. All right. With that, I'm going to cede the mic to my vice chair here and present House Bill 1186.
Chairman, I did it right that time for you, right?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, if you'll go ahead and present your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here to present House Bill 1186 off of LC 491671. One of the things this committee talks a lot about is school performance and accountability, and this is what this bill aims to address. Is we currently have school performance rankings and ratings, but it's changed greatly over time. And what we want to do is put a stake in the ground and say there are a number of different ways to measure it, but what parents and families and students deserve is a single score. I liken it to, imagine if you go to a restaurant, right? There's a number of different inputs that goes into your restaurant score, but you know if you're going to a restaurant that's rated 100 or rated 50, you're going to get a drastically different experience. And so this quote-unquote simple bill, they're all simple bills, it's 2 pages. Really the first page is the crux of it that says, okay, we have to calculate a score, but that's got to be a single score. We owe that to the parents, not to play games, not to try to be obtuse or hide what performance is. We've got to have a single understandable score that's produced by the state, because if we don't do that, folks are going to start to come in. You see it already, Niche.com and some of these other outside entities. They try to create a score so that when you're moving and you're looking at houses, oh man, how's my school rating? If you can't find it, if the state doesn't produce it for you, you're going to look all over for it. And so this just clarifies. It says we've got to produce a single score that parents can easily comprehend and make a decision on school performance. It doesn't go in to say what goes into that score, right? I'm going to let the experts decide how to calculate that score, what weights go into it. But at the end of the day, all of those weights and all those metrics got to form up to a single score. On the second page there, it's not only enough to produce a score, but we got to put that in the hands of parents and families. And so lines 20 through 27 simply state you got to publish it on your website. You've got to either on the school system's website or the individual school website publish that data out there. So we've had the governor's office, DOE, a number of entities who are supportive of this effort. The bill doesn't speak to this here, but just anecdotally, I'd like to say, as people figure out how to calculate that single score, I'd like to see that calculation remain the same over a period of time. In Georgia here, we've played too many games of how we calculate that score, making it difficult to compare year over year over year how performance is trending. In a state and a country, we spend trillions of dollars on education. We want to make sure, are we getting our bang for our buck? And having an easy to read, understand, and score that's calculated the same way year over year is the right thing to do. And so that's what House Bill 1186 attempts to accomplish.
Well, it's lighting up here. Thank you for the presentation.
Uh-oh, I talk too much.
All right, so we have some discussion, it looks like, from the committee. We'll start with Floor Leader Wade.
I appreciate the bill, and just throwing on, for those that don't know, my former school board hat. I think we were accustomed. I spent over 15 years, almost 16, on the Dawson County Board of Education, and I remember how important it was to give clarity to the community so that you could have serious conversations when you have things to celebrate success-wise, and also provide information as to the areas that you're going to spend focusing on to make improvements. Having a single score helps guide that conversation when you have to make tough decisions. So I support this, and I know there's other questions, but at the appropriate time.
Tough decisions, but I'd also submit, if there's schools that are doing it the right way and we see upward trends, I want to mimic what they're doing. And not having a score, having that data easily at our fingertips, we lose that opportunity.
Okay, number 12, Representative Wilkerson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Chairman. I guess you're trying to close a gap because the scores aren't readily available. Is that what you're trying to figure out? Okay.
Correct.
Follow-up question. I know several years ago, we've put a lot of scores out there, to your point. I know on GOSA's website, the scores were completely wrong. They were basically double counting. I was surprised that no one had ever caught it. Who's going to make sure these numbers are accurate? Because it is kind of hard to boil it down to this school is an A or B or D, and as well as an achievement gap. If you have a homogeneous population, you're not going to have a gap. And so my concern is that if we just put one blanket score up there without giving any, there's no requirement that you explain how that score is calculated. You just give an A, B, or C, or D. And I'll give you, well, I guess one comment is, say we were rated as far as how many bills we pass. Every Democrat would be an F. Every freshman Republican would probably be a B, and chairman would be an A. And so if you look at it just by one simple score without explaining the dynamics, I think that's my concern is by doing this.
So the good news is with this bill, there's nothing to prohibit DOE from publishing the components that go into that score. So they can put the single score at the top, much like your report card. I can publish your GPA, and then underneath that, I can put all your classes and what grades you got. So DOE can still do that. What we want to do is just get parents out of having to, on their own, sort of figure out their own calculation. Okay, DOE published these 4 metrics. How do I, as a parent, weight those? And so we're saying produce a single score at minimum, and then still show us what goes into that score.
Would you be open to an amendment to require that they define what that is? Because you're giving a score without telling what it is. Would you be open to an amendment that says, this is what the score means? And like I do a lot of SEC reporting, and it says, this is what it is, but they have the little disclaimer that says this doesn't mean future performance, et cetera. So I think without the clarity, it kind of is misleading.
I trust the grown-ups in the room that are smarter than me to come up with what the score should be. There's a lot of experts behind me that know how to do that better than I do, better than we do. The only amendment or suggestion I would ask is could we try to keep that calculation the same for some period of years so that we can have a year-over-year valid comparison. If you're changing the way you calculate every year, you lose that ability to compare year-over-year.
And annually is, I'm sorry, last question. Annually is when? Because basically they have to do it annually. You have to do it 30 days after annual. But the lack of clarity, I'm running into some other situations regarding schools, is that annually could be November, annually could be April. And without saying when that annual is, sometimes we do have to legislate common sense.
Yeah.
So number 24, I believe that's Representative Maynor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair, for the bill. I'm in full support of the bill. I just thought about something. So right now, I know the purpose of the bill, things have been changing, in lots of different entities. So like Representative Wilkerson said, at one point, scores were on the GOSA website. And now if this is going to go to the DOE website, at the appropriate time, I do think it might be beneficial to do a friendly amendment because there are entities. So for example, there's a local Fulton Technology and Energy Authority that uses the scoring from GOSA. So we need in here somewhere that says, any institutions that were previous using X, Y, and Z will now be using the scoring of this, if you're open to that when the appropriate time comes.
Well, again, I'd point you to lines 20 through 27. I think that does a good job of publishing and easily accessible on DOE's website, your local school system's website, your school's website, putting it at fingertips. I'd hate to kind of change it up too much, yeah.
Well, so, no, I completely agree with everything. But since the scores are no longer in one place, and now the scores are going to be in a second place, there's legislation already out there that says your programming is dependent on the scores at this place. You see what I'm saying?
I'm not, but I will always take an amendment from my friend, so, yeah. Y'all have language.
Floor Leader Wade.
Thank you, sir. Just two quick things. One, I think just to kind of respond to Wilkerson's concern, and I respect it, I'm reading this as on lines 18 and 19 that coming off of line 17 at the end where it starts with code section 4, that, and I want to clarify this, that references back to, and I want to make sure that everybody understands on line 14 where it says 1, the office, comma, in coordination with the Department of Education. In that line, and if that is the office of the governor's office.
You are correct. You
Okay,
are correct.
so just so everybody's clear, in code, that's what that is referencing.
You are correct.
So GOSA and the department are going to be working together for student achievement, achievement gap closure, and student progress. And the legislature is giving direction to ensure that the majority of the score is going to be based on student achievement. So that gives clarity for the experts you referenced to be able to justify what that is. There's nothing that will limit and there's not a grade here. I'm not reading a grade. I'm seeing a 0 to 100 in the bill, correct?
Correct.
There's not an A, B, C, D. There is a grade that will be allocated.
Correct.
Nothing will prevent the department from being able to provide, and I've seen these reports, very specific details as to each of these areas that led to that final score. Similar to what you described, there is you see those restaurant scores. You can see the categories that they come up with. They won't be limited from being able to provide details for folks that like you've asked for. Is that correct? Is that your intent? That's
Yeah, and if the committee would want to add, to your point, a requirement that they produce a single score and also the components that have gone to that score, the bill is sort of silent to that right now and leaves it at the discretion of DOE. Happy to entertain that. Again, the intent of the bill is just give me a score.
Thank you.
And I got a friendly text saying that GOSA does publish scores on their site, which may satisfy yeah.
Okay, Representative Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Yes, so for this report, will there be the other reports that GOSA is doing now, will they continue, or will this be the only score?
Yeah, my understanding is, well, I'm thinking from a DOE perspective, I think they've gotten a waiver to produce CCRPI scores on a disaggregated basis. We're just asking them to be brought back together on a state basis to be published.
Who got the waiver?
DOE got a waiver from the feds.
Okay, and how long ago was that?
Fairly recent, within the last couple months.
Okay.
I want to say November, December, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I'm just saying, so I understand why you would like to do this, and I do agree there are other private groups that do it, so, but I am concerned about the one score for everything. I mean, I get a little bit worried that, wealth-based schools will always do, better and things like that. So, so I just think it's important that, that there is other, so it's good that this report will have all the aggregate explaining this, but I do think that there's some other reports that have been out there that are still helpful, and I would hope that they continue. Like, I know we're talking on the Literacy Council, having a literacy dashboard. Like, I don't want that to have to go away, that to be hidden, and only have this one report. So, do you know, and I actually can't name the other reports offhand, but I know that there are other. I know they have several out there right now.
Yep.
So do you
Yeah,
know
my
if they would
understanding is-
continue?
is
or-
all those will be still readily available for anyone seeking to access it. We're not eliminating any reporting that's currently being provided. Yeah.
And DOE and GOSA are you in favor of this bill, or are they
Yes.
speaking to this bill, or?
They are supportive, yes. I
Okay.
believe.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Representative Pierce.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Hilton, I appreciate the overall intent of the bill, and I think that this will set a lot of minds and hearts, kind of get us clear on how the schools are performing. At first, I thought you were addressing systems, but you're going individual schools, and I think that will be very helpful. In Bibb County, we've had some schools that were not doing as well, but things have been picking up, and I think it's going to be really helpful for our students as well as the parents to have some idea as to what's going on with the schools.
And coming off of COVID,
The
where we
overall intent, though.
yeah, coming off of COVID, where we didn't report performance for a while, I'd like to see us get back in the rhythm of doing that. So yeah, thank you. I appreciate your support.
Chairman Irwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Vice Chair, let me ask, are you in the intent here also considering a numerical grade versus a letter grade?
Correct. There were the intent of this bill is to keep our scale of 0 to 100, not have a numerical grade for schools. Or alphabetical, I'm sorry. One of my
Okay.
ABCs.
And,
yeah.
and a follow-up question and comment.
Yes, please.
And there are going to be categories such as progress or growth that will score inside that, and that'll be reported too. And then overall, all the categories would have a numerical grade attached to them depending on the weight of those categories. That would not only show some transparency to the parents, but would also allow them to see that there's more to that score that's on the bottom.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, thank you.
And that's the ultimate transparency is here's the score and here's all the component. We don't want to just give you a score and say, here you go. We want to be absolutely transparent so you went into that score.
Representative Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mm-hmm.
I guess a couple questions. First, from what I understand, the state board's going to have final decision. Is that correct? On the weights and everything else. I mean, we got to decide it's two departments are working together, so they got to agree. Then at the end of the day, you still have to have one decision maker. And so the state board will approve the weights. Are we going to have anything in there to say what the weights can be just so they have some guidance? Or make sure they don't change it every so often, like you said earlier, because you hate to look at a moving target. It's not going to be valid anyway, because what we're doing is not, doesn't satisfy those kind of requirements. But we do, I think, need consistency because growth is important as well. And so I would think you'd want those factors played into the bill also, so we can, or somehow word it where they make that decision at a certain time. And then speaking of timing, well, I'll let you answer that first. And kind of.
You raise excellent points. I don't think it's the policy position of this body to get into the actual calculate. Again, I want the experts behind me to do that. You raise a valid point, and we've talked about it. I would like the calculation to stay consistent over multiple years. And again, if that's something we want to entertain in the bill, happy to insert language if that's needed.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of depends on the grade levels, I guess, because K-5 is going to be a little bit different than your middle school 6-8, and your high school's, of course, 9 through 12. But I think that would kind of be important to make sure, unless they already have an agreement in place or a policy in place, where we're going to keep this formula for so many years. That's just a concern, because you would hate for the new school superintendent come in and change direction, and then 4 years later, somebody else come in and change direction again.
Yeah, because scores in the wrong hands could be manipulated, weightings to produce outcomes you want to see.
Correct.
And so by bad act, I mean, you know, again, for the committee to decide.
I don't know if this is smart, and probably isn't, so please don't think we should do it or anything unless it's a good idea. It's like if you sunset this and they get back with us within 3 years or a year, then we can, if we're satisfied the way they did it, continue it, or sunset it in 5 years, make sure it's got a 4-year reign. And that way we can look at the process and go, hey, we agree with them and the state board, and we codified. Thank you very much, kind of thing. Something to think about. I don't know if you've thought about that or not. And then one additional question. I think you've got a question about that. So, but I've got one additional question after that.
Well, let me.
Floor leader.
Okay, so
Or do you want me to keep? I can ask another question, but it sounds like he's fixing to respond to that. So,
do you have a response that you would like to say?
yeah.
For Mr. Walker, Legislative Council, just to give some clarity, because I know this is a part of other code section, do you think it would be beneficial for the sponsor to consider language that would direct that the State Board of Education shall formally adopt whatever the office and the Department of Education come up with? Would that be beneficial, or is it already assumed that that's the normal process for all of the reports that the department is currently doing on an annual basis? I think the sponsor would you be okay with clarity on that?
I'm not quite sure I understand the gentleman's question. I would say that the General Assembly has pretty wide purview to direct the State Board of Education to adopt whatever policies, rules, and regulations that the General Assembly believes would be appropriate policy for the state of Georgia and its education system. So if you wanted language to that effect included, then I'm sure we could come up with it.
I'll just let the sponsor decide if he thinks that it would be more clarifying if that were to be an outcome, so that there is a decision maker. So that was the only comment I had, and I'll let him finish.
Yeah, thank you. I think at the end of the day, sometimes, in my opinion, it's just my opinion, you have to have an end decision maker to carry it through. Somebody's got to, at school level, it's the principal, system level, it's the superintendent, in the classroom, it's the teacher. So that's just my perception. So I'm not sure how you think about that.
Well, I know we've got folks signed up to speak. I mean, the way I read it, the office, which is GOSA in coordination with DOE. So to me, the quarterback in the situation seems to be GOSA in consultation with DOE producing this score, them being the final decision maker and what that score ultimately is.
I guess my question
Is your concern too
disagree with each other? Who's
the arbiter?
which side, which has a way?
I may defer to legal counsel here.
Yes, it is correct. This this code section does reside in Chapter 14 of Title 20, and that is dedicated to the Office of Student Achievement. And the way the language writes it is OSA in conjunction with the Department of Education. So the expectation would be that they would work in collaboration, but it would ultimately be the Office of Student Achievement's responsibility to make sure that that there's compliance.
Because DOE has the data.
Yeah, as long as we have who it is, I'm fine with either one personally. I just want to make sure we had a decision maker in there. And the last piece is, for any of your programs in place, I don't know if you can still hear me or not, but any of those programs in place, this does in regard to them, does it? Like if you have programs such as, a lot of your career academies are not a school,
Yeah.
so they wouldn't have a score. Would that stay true
Yeah.
with this model as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, there's more questions, but what I'd like to do now is hear from the audience. So if we can do that, and then hold your questions, and then we'll try to get back to those because we've got some more to handle after this. So first, I'd like to ask up Kyle Wingfield, Georgia Policy Impact, and Taylor Hawkins, Frontline, you're on deck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the committee, and thank you to the author for this bill, which we fully support. I'm Kyle Wingfield with both the Georgia Public Policy Foundation and Georgia Policy Impact. The foundation believes very strongly that transparency is the first building block of accountability. We believe that so strongly that from 1996 to 2010, we published a Georgia report card for parents, which included a lot of this kind of metrics, academic performance, student safety, school finances, and that sort of thing. The state, over time, picked up a lot of that work, and so we backed away from doing that and pursued other priorities. But we remain committed to that, and so just this morning, actually, we took the component data that has been discussed in this hearing, and we calculated a CCRPI score for all the schools and districts by grade cluster in the state, and we published those. And so we very clearly believe this is an important thing that parents, educators, taxpayers alike deserve to know these facts, and they deserve to have a simple, clear, meaningful score that takes all those components into account, making sure that they remain transparent as well, not to try to hide any of that, but to provide something on top of that that provides clarity about how a school's doing. And we believe to the question about weights and how they could change over time, I know the bill does not speak to that, but we would emphasize very strongly our belief that we need to have consistency over time so that we can judge, are our schools getting better? Are they getting worse? And I appreciated the comment that this is as much about being able to celebrate schools that are doing well as to highlight schools that need some improvement. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but we fully support this bill.
Okay. Any questions for the speaker from the committee? Okay, no questions. Taylor Hawkins with Frontline. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can't say it any more eloquently than Chairman Hilton and our friend Kyle from Georgia Public Policy Foundation. So I'll just, in the interest of time, say that we fully support the bill and ask the committee to pass. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, so at this point, open it up for discussion, and I have 17. Is that you?
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. So, so I guess I understand the need for consistency, but I also think when we produce these scores, what if that maybe we might need to change the formula? I mean, I don't want to be totally prescriptive in this bill about if we, based on the results, they realize that maybe they might be skewed in some way. They wouldn't have been intended to be, obviously, but they might be. So is there anything in here that says that they cannot change the formula? No, you're wanting that. You're asking, that's your intention. But it's nothing that would keep GOSA and the DOE from adjusting the formula if they needed to.
That is correct, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, wish list, and maybe that's something we either add or do another bill, because you're right, if the calculation changes every year, you're aiming at a moving target. So an 89 today may be totally different than 100 a year from now.
Right. And I have a question. When we did CCRPI reports before, I know they were, I remember being a parent and looking at those, but were those on school websites also, or were they out there for the school system, or do you know? Do you know if the score was published on every school website?
I believe historically they've been held on GOSA's website, but I'll defer to some of the practitioners we have if you all have put them on your sites or not. I don't know if that's been a common practice. That's partly why we've got page 2 there to encourage that to take place.
And I have one final question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And so, what will happen? For these low performing schools? What is your intention to happen with these low performing schools if they?
My intention is to continue what the work of this body is doing, is to recognize those and come alongside them and give them the helps and support they need. I would also like to make parents aware in the local community that, gosh, my school's 50%. You know, what can I do to help them get them up to speed? And so I think it's awareness breeds success. You know, if parents know my school's having an issue, I'd like to think that we're going to do the best of ourselves and to help them
Yeah,
out.
I think that I would hope that the purpose of this is to make investments, you know, in these schools that are showing that they need.
But if
that
we're
they need
flying, if
help.
we're flying
Yeah.
blind, which in some respects we are now, we don't know where to kind of laser point into those schools that need help.
Mhm. Thank you.
Okay, so what I would recommend is some of the committee has some additional questions, and afterwards let's have that, because we have another bill that we need to also hear. We have a motion on the table. That's right. So, okay, so now appropriate time.
Can you hear me? Okay. Actually, kind of reading through it and thinking, I'm comfortable with where you're at. I think there might be some tweaks that you can consider. But I think I understand what you're trying to focus on, and then let those folks come to the table and work together. And I see it as the office is the final arbiter, so I don't think you need any more clarity. But I had to think through that just to make sure that we were trying to address that. So motion do pass.
Okay, do I have a second? Okay. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. Sure. All those that were in favor, aye. Raise your hand. Okay.
Only people on the subcommittee can vote.
And all those against, raise your hand. Subcommittee. So it's 3.
All right, I got it.
Yeah. He's no, he's a yes. Bill passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So any of y'all that had questions, just talk to the chairman after. I mean, I know obviously he's open to some concepts and ideas, so y'all feel free to have those conversations, please.
All right, you're good. All right, thank you everyone for that good discussion. If the author of the bill up next is here, House Bill 936, Chairman Bonner, if you'd come up and present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, committee. I'll certainly be brief given the time constraints that we have. I'm working off of LC 491837S. Again, that's 1837S. So the bill before you today is a bill that we've been referring to as the Protecting Children's Spaces. It's a very straightforward bill. It simply it is related to our public schools, and it just says that if you're a biological male, that you use the male restroom, locker room facilities. If you're a female, you use the female restroom facilities, locker rooms, and it also applies to overnight field trips, so that males and females are not put into the same room during the course of an overnight field trip. This is what a lot of schools throughout Georgia are doing now by practice, but this simply puts into code what is consistent with the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals ruling in 2022 when the court found that the policy requiring biological males and biological females to use the bathroom designated for that gender was permissible in part because the district had an obligation to protect the privacy, welfare, and safety of its students and could bear civil liability for harm to its student population. So again, this simply puts into code what is throughout the state and most places it's a matter of practice, but is not a matter of policy. That's the bill, Mr. Chairman. I know that there's probably some questions, and we're ready to stand for those.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will yield for questions now. If anyone on the committee has questions for the author. We've got a few here. I'm going to go to my far right, number 25.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. First, Representative, thanks. I agree with the bill. I just want to, have you kind of just double checked to make sure everything's constitutional and everything else? And from what I understand, the basics of the bill is just what you said. Males going to males, females going to females, unless the unisex bathroom, then you take turns or whatever else.
Yes, we do feel it's legally sound. We've added some language that addresses the American with Disabilities Act to make sure that it's compliant with that, as well as account for situations where it may be medically necessary for someone to come in during an emergency to provide service, do an inspection, things like that. So we do feel that based on the changes to the bill, that it is legally sound.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go to number 23 to my right here.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the bill. I just want to point out, I agree with the policy, and I want to point out, I think this helps. There are a lot of students that sometimes are dealing with things and issues that are special needs, but maybe not necessarily would be an American with a disability, per se. Students on the spectrum, children that have anxiety issues, lots of different anomalies that teachers and administrators have to accommodate, right? And so what I've read here, especially want to point out lines 45 through 54, that you have contemplated that opportunity for when there are individual students. And I just want to make sure that you have an opportunity to kind of explain the reason that you felt that was necessary. And I think that actually will give alleviate some concerns that this is not going to ensure that those students don't have an opportunity to have that need or accommodation made.
That's right. And I appreciate the question. And the way it's termed in the bill is that that in the event that the school has to make a reasonable accommodation for students. So again, it stipulates that biological males use the male facilities, biological females use the female facilities, and if there's a child that is struggling with identity or uncomfortable with any one of those options, then the school is actually required in this case to make a reasonable accommodation for the student. And that again, that applies for the restrooms, for locker rooms, and for overnight field trips. So I do believe it's a very common sense approach to this issue that does protect all children.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. In your mind, does this provide relief from anxiety for folks in that it sort of sets the rules of the road in terms of how this, rather than sort of a patchwork approach across the state?
Well, again, what we're putting in the code is consistent with what the courts have ruled. So, we would certainly hope that all the systems, the public school systems throughout Georgia, are adhering to the court's ruling, but we felt it necessary to put this into code so that, again, all parents across the state of Georgia understand what the policy is at that individual school system, so that they can make the most informed decision as to where to send their child.
Thank you. We're going to go to my left, Representative Evans with a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for this bill. I wanted to confirm, so you have the male and the female, and if you have a non-binary student, what kind of facilities would they use?
Well, again, if they did not meet the definitions in the bill as to biological male or biological female, then again the school would be required to make a reasonable accommodation, and typically that accommodation is a unisex bathroom or a separate changing facility for that student.
Okay, thank you. And just to follow up, so I see you said on lines 45 it says restroom or changing area. And is there any other language in there about locker room, or are those the two references in the bill to the accommodations? Or
yes,
are there other?
Right. So the changing area essentially kind of encompasses the locker rooms.
Okay, and are those repeated anywhere else in the bill, or is that the only time when it talks about facilities? I see it on line 52 too.
It looks like it is a couple of places, but it's consistent throughout that it applies to the restrooms and then the changing facilities which would include locker rooms.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Evans. We're going to go down to my right over here, Representative Wilkerson with a question.
Thank you. Sorry, I had to step out for a second. So, you had mentioned the courts have already decided this. Is that what you're saying?
So the 11th Circuit Court made a ruling in 2022 that said that this was permissible, and so in my conversations with our school systems here in Georgia, that is what most schools are doing by practice, but there's no written policy. So, for instance, in my home county of Fayette, if I were to go to our local school board and say, "Can you show me the written policy on this?" To my knowledge, they don't have it, right? But they're doing this by a matter of practice. So if they're challenged on that, they could say, well, we're simply doing what's consistent with the court's ruling. But what we're doing is actually putting that into Georgia code.
Okay, follow-up question. So you said most. So are there districts in Georgia where there's not male and female on the bathrooms? I mean, have you identified any districts where this is an issue, or is this?
Well, so they are designated, but the issue is to make sure that a biological male does not go into a girl's restroom, and vice versa. So that's what it doesn't change the fact that schools identify facilities. This simply says that you're going to go into the one that meets your biological sex.
Last question, if you don't mind. Last one. So as a parent, my kids are in college now, and my wife would take my son to some places sometimes, and I would take my daughter some places sometimes. We're somewhere, and my daughter has to go to the bathroom, and she's 3, and she's got to go. When she's got to go, she's got to go. I take her with me to the men's bathroom. She just goes to the bathroom. What happens to that school or me? Anything? Or is this taking into consideration the fact that as a parent, my 3-year-old is not going to listen to the fact that they got to go to a girl's bathroom?
You're talking about at a school?
At a school, yeah. We spend a lot of time at schools. I mean, I'm very active in the schools, and so we go to a lot of schools.
And so I could kind of give you a different scenario, and I would imagine that you take your daughter to you may even take her to the a men's room, and you would maybe make sure there are no other men in there while you stand at the door while she goes in. Things like that. But no, this would be, and there's an element of intentionally mixing those in the facilities. This wouldn't be for a child just inadvertently walked in to the opposite restroom.
No, I'm sorry, but I just need clarity on this. No, I intentionally took my daughter into the men's room because that's where I am, and I'm not going to trust my 3-year-old somewhere else. So I intentionally took her into a bathroom where there is nobody else. I just made sure I washed, and then if someone walks by and sees that I've got a 3-year-old young girl or my wife's got a little boy, is anybody liable for that? Because
No. So under this bill, in your scenario, there would be no liability.
So what's the point of doing this?
Well, the point is not for parents that are bringing their child to go to while they wait for them while they go to the restroom. The issue is making sure that biological males use the male facilities and biological females use the female facilities. I mean, you would not. I would dare say you probably would not send your daughter by herself into the men's restroom.
No, I wouldn't send her any bathroom at 3.
All right, we've got a handful of questions still here. I'm going to go to number 24 to my right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for bringing the bill to us, Representative Bonner. Couple questions. So I know that as I'm learning about this subject area, there are intersex individuals, and so we have transgender and we have intersex, and with them being completely different. Intersex, they may have multiple organs, and not necessarily reproductive organs, but for intersex, they may have multiple sexual organs. And with that being said, and I don't know the science behind it, but is it true, Mr. Walker, that if someone is intersex, and I believe this is like 0.1% of the population, but if someone is intersex, they do have a preponderance of either female or male DNA, and so for the intersex population, does that mean they would go by their primary DNA?
I don't know the science behind that, Representative. I can't answer that question.
And so a follow-up question then.
One more.
So for people that are intersex, since we don't have a doctor up here, for people that are intersex, then they would they would know their DNA, and so they would use the appropriate bathroom. Or with this bill, they would go to the they would go to a mixed-use bathroom. I am concerned about that 0.1%. I do want to make sure they get a fair shot at it.
Fair shot being?
Meaning, I believe that, so I will give the committee an example. My daughter went to college, and we walked into the bathroom, and there were urinals that did surprise me because we were on the female dorm floor, so that was surprising. And she explained to me that there are transgender students, and that's why there were urinals in her bathroom. So with that being said, I have been doing a little research, and so for the intersex piece, I want to make sure, because the intersex is a unique population than the transgender. So I want to make sure with this bill that we are not going to, that we are making sure we're looking out for people that have no control over a genetic misnomer, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, again, you'd mentioned the very small, almost minute population that would apply to, and again, I think that would fall under that reasonable accommodation piece of the bill.
That's the question.
Yes.
All right. Friends, we got a couple more questions. And here's what we're going to do. If y'all could keep your questions real brief, because I got a room full of folks that have come a long way that want to talk to us. So if we go rapid fire mode here pretty quick, I'd appreciate that. I think I saw 23.
Yes, Chairman, very quick. I just want to make sure your bill contemplates that the cause of action would be the school would actually make the choice if in a situation, but they'll have the flexibility to acknowledge a father who is taking a 3-year-old in an emergency situation. If it were to be a problem in which that you refuse any other option, and every single time the school would have discretion to determine for the cause of action to prevent that from happening, correct? That's the intent. Then that's the way, if you continue on to the rest of the bill, I don't think it would make it completely a requirement that a dad cannot take care of a 3-year-old that needs to go into a restroom for an emergency situation.
Right, and the focus of the bill is the school, that the folks that run and administer the school, not a parent that were to show up on campus. So.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. We're going to go to number 22 to my right.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing the bill. I know we've talked a lot about bathrooms, but I also kind of want to point out that this does pertain to more than just restrooms, correct? So this is overnight facilities, locker rooms, places where children will be changing their clothes. It's not just like they might be behind closed doors.
Right. Could be, as a part of the drama department or production department where they're doing a play and have changing rooms, things like that. So it would apply to all of those facilities.
Okay. Would you say that it's a fair statement that this is an effort to keep all children safe, trans children included? Because I could also see a scenario where there may be a biological female, going into a high school boys' locker room, whether that's an overnight trip or, a sporting event. We don't want to see things like sexual assault occur. And I think if we can avoid that being the case, is that what this bill is trying to protect?
I would agree, and that's why I read almost directly from the 11th Circuit Court decision, where it stated that the district had an obligation to protect the privacy, welfare, and safety of its students. It doesn't stipulate whether you're protecting the boys or the girls. You're protecting everybody.
All students. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go one more question, then I'd like to hear from the audience. Number 25 to my right, Representative Townsend.
Just a quick question, possibly for council. Does this set up any kind of litigation concerns or anything else for school systems who try to implement this policy, but something happens and there's a violation of it? At times, kids will do things out of the norm, not get caught. Or if somebody accuses the teacher of seeing it, not enforcing it, is that a liability for the teacher or the principal in that case, or?
First of all, there's always risk of litigation that can't be mitigated against. School systems are repeatedly involved in litigation. This bill requires the designation of certain spaces in the facility.
Okay.
And so non-compliance in that sense would essentially be some failure to properly designate the facilities.
So if they'd have the unisex bathroom set up like they should, or healthcare changing in the
And
gowns
in the
or whatever.
absence of some extraordinary
Okay.
circumstances, the sovereign immunity that the school system would enjoy would apply.
Good, thank you.
All right, thank you, committee, for your good questions. I'm not a math major, but we've got the room for 15 minutes, and I got 22 people to speak. So that's a little bit less than a minute each, but I know you all have come a long way. So I'm going to call you in order here. If you come up for or against, try to do it as concise and meaningful as you can. And we'd love to hear from you all in the audience. So with that, with Sarah Hunt Blackwell, Jeff Graham, and Ben Ackerley, y'all go ahead and line up and rapid fire, and we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Sarah Hunt Blackwell. I'm the First Amendment policy advocate with the ACLU of Georgia. The ACLU of Georgia opposes HB 936 because of the expansive harm it inflicts on students and school staff. Not only is bathroom access for transgender, non-binary students complicated by HB 936, teachers, principals, and other school staff would be subject to civil liability for trying to ensure that transgender students can use the bathroom safely, without stigma or embarrassment, and without the threat of physical violence. Putting educators' jobs, livelihoods, and freedom on the line because this legislature wants to dictate who can use which restrooms is cruel and despicable. Transgender youth already face higher rates of bullying, harassment, and violence than their cisgender peers. And instead of trying to avoid these very real issues, discriminatory policies like HB 936 exacerbates the harms. To reiterate, the ACLU of Georgia opposes HB 936 because of its impact on students and school officials, and we ask that the committee vote no on this bill. I will yield for questions, especially regarding the new and alarming civil liability that this bill is proposing. Thank you.
Let's take one question.
I think it's for the good of the committee because, for me, at least, I'm learning. Can you explain what binary is?
Binary is the concept that there are a number of genders. So binary assumes that there are two genders, that being male or female. But there are people who are non-binary who fall outside of this dichotomy. So that is the difference between binary and non-binary.
And follow up, non-binary, what would be an example? If it's not male, if it's not female, would intersex be the third? And are there more than the three?
Intersex is one category, but someone can just identify simply as non-binary because they don't identify as male or female.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Graham with Georgia Equality.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeff Graham with Georgia Equality. We're a statewide organization whose mission is to advance fairness, safety, and opportunity for the LGBT community here in Georgia. I am, of course, opposed to House Bill 936. The bill creates restrictions on where students can go to the restroom and which school facilities they are able to access. Forcing a transgender student who lives every day as a girl to use the boys' restroom puts her at risk of harassment and assault. And forcing a transgender student to use a separate restroom for everyone from everyone else adds to the bullying and mistreatment that they may face. School districts across the country have successfully worked to ensure that transgender students have access to facilities that match their gender identity while still protecting the privacy of all students. And while we do have an 11th Circuit Court of Appeal decision, I think it is important to point out that the U.S. Supreme Court has twice now declined to hear cases about bills banning transgender people from using restrooms that align with their gender identity. In both of those cases, the lower court did prevail and sided with the transgender student. The intentionally vague nature of this bill could open the floodgates of frivolous litigation, leaving taxpayers to foot the bill in defense of discrimination. Furthermore, the introduction of bill after bill after bill targeting members of the LGBT community for special scrutiny is having a dangerous ripple effect. Recently, a non-binary high school student in Oklahoma died after being violently attacked in a high school restroom that they were forced to use because of a state law in Oklahoma. While that incident didn't happen here in Georgia, it is the product of the fact that over 400 anti-LGBTQ bills have been introduced around the country so far just in 2024. Nearly a half dozen have been introduced here in Georgia, including this bill that directly targets members of the LGBT community for discrimination, and many more are designed to stigmatize and restrict access to information regarding LGBT history and information. This is government overreach and nearly impossible to enforce. Trans youth deserve to live freely instead of fighting off politically motivated attacks. Please do the right thing and vote against House Bill 936.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Ben, on your way up, or Mr. Ackerley, I am going to keep a little stopwatch up here. Y'all didn't listen. I love you guys. You didn't listen to my instructions. So I'm gonna try to keep you to a minute on my little stopwatch because I do want to hear from everybody in the audience and give everybody a chance. So
Sounds
go
good.
for it. I'll kindly interrupt if you.
Sounds good. I'll be quick. Good afternoon, representatives. My name is Ben Ackerley. I am here today to oppose HB 936, both of them. I'm the proud parent of a transgender child here in Georgia, and I also co-lead the Georgia chapter of Transparent. We're a support group for parents and families of trans and non-binary kids. We have over 120 families throughout the state of Georgia who all oppose this legislation. Because I only have a brief amount of time, I just want to point a couple of things out. One, trans kids live in the gender identity that they live in. So little trans girls look like girls. They look like girls, they grow up like girls, they have girl peer groups. And sending them into a boys' bathroom just because of their genitalia is a really dangerous situation. We've seen that across the country when this legislation is passed. And so I know when we're talking about this biological male and female, what we're not maybe thinking about is the practicality of looking like a girl and showing up in a boys' restroom. And the same for trans boys. Opposite way. I want to point out something that's been brought up, that there's this accommodation of a single-use restroom. We have families all throughout the state of Georgia who are going back and forth to their school systems, figuring out how to take care of their kids. And what we found time and time again is the single-use restroom is not good for two reasons. One, it's often in another building or another part of the school, and that student really can't access it on a regular basis. And that leaves them unable to go to the bathroom. Many of them end up with urinary issues because they're stuck holding the bathroom all day, especially for younger kids.
Thank you, Mr. Ackerley.
Could I ask one more part to that? I'll be very quick. The other thing is just that accommodation keeps them separate from their peers, and all they want to do is be included.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Elizabeth Wagner, Michaela Kim Snyders. If y'all would make your way up to the podium. Is this Ms. Wagner?
Good afternoon.
Yeah.
My name's Elizabeth Wagner. I'm going to have to edit this, but anyone with a heart and a handful of brain cells can see this bill for what it is. It is open hunting season on trans youth in Georgia. Going back to what the bill sponsor spoke to about schools, I have a student in Gwinnett County. This is not an issue. Drama, these kids, they're queer, they're trans. It is not an issue for students. It is not an issue in the school that I am aware of. This is a solution looking for a problem at the expense of our children again and again and again. So what I want to say is that 2 weeks ago, some friends and I delivered letters to all of y'all asking to speak with you privately so people don't have to stand up here and share their private stories. Please meet with us in a small group so you understand what it means to raise a trans child. My name and number were on that letter. I got not a single phone call. So this is not protecting children.
Thank you, Ms. Wagner.
Yes.
Thank you. Michaela.
Good afternoon, committee and Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for letting us speak. My name is Michaela Arciaga. I'm the Georgia Director of Advocacy for IDRA. I'm also a former teacher. I am a former sponsor of the Gay Straight Alliance. I'm a former swim coach. So when we're talking about these kids, we're talking about the kids that I served and their families. I'm just going to speak to the fact that that our kids are not just watching us, they learn from us and how we treat their peers. When we isolate and single out their peers, we are normalizing and making that behavioral acceptable for them. That is how bullying happens. And we know that our kids are all at risk of this. This body has been talking about this for months and years now. There is substantial evidence that when teachers are able to lead with trauma-informed, human-centered, inclusive practices, that students develop better senses of empathy. All of our students develop better senses of empathy and are less likely to engage in bullying in the future. You just heard that this is life and death policy. This is real now. Kids are dying, and we need this. We need y'all to focus on what will actually make our kids safer. Comprehensive anti-discrimination, comprehensive training for our educators, for y'all, for anyone who is interacting with our young people in any capacity. These are the things that make our kids safer, not this kind of policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Kim, Dr. Lulu, and Danielle Bonanno? Sorry. Okay. You're up.
My name is Kim Siders. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you all. I have a transgender child. I was very surprised to find out that I have a transgender child. I did not know that could happen. I had a child 12 years ago, put all my gendered assumptions on that child, that he would, like John Deere and sports and the color blue and play with the boys, and from the age of 4, that child told me repeatedly that was not their gender. I didn't understand. I kept pushing back. Anyway, at some point, this child at 7 or 8 years old hands me a piece of paper that said, "Mommy, there is no place for me in this world." And I had to challenge myself and educate myself on what this child's telling me about being a girl on the inside. And I did, and I started with my pediatrician. I went to a child psychologist. We got a play therapist. I read books written by psychologists who work with transgender people. They are 0.7% of the population of children between the ages of 12 and 18. So I'm not surprised that y'all don't know them. You don't know their issues. You think that they are boys trying to sneak into girls' bathrooms to look under the stall door. They are not.
Thank you, Ms. Thank you for sharing your story. Would you mind staying around afterwards so that we can chat with you and share your story some more?
Yeah, I will.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Dr. Lulu.
Hello, everyone. I happen to be a pediatrician, so I'm actually a doctor. And I do know that 1.7% of the world, so near 2% of the world is intersex. That's just one correction. I'm also Nigerian. I'm an immigrant. I'm Catholic. I'm queer. And my child is a black trans woman. There are people trying to kill my child today for breathing. Please, in the name of whatever you believe in, I came all the way from Texas to tell you that this bill is dangerous. We already have one child that we know for a fact that was killed by other children. How many more kids do we want? It's dangerous. It's not applicable to anyone. It's definitely not non-discriminatory. It doesn't show access to best care to the students. These are the words that you used. It's harmful to student populations. There's no reasonable accommodation for a child who is non-binary. When you say boys go to the left, girls go to the right, where does that child go? My name is Dr. Lulu. This is real for me because my child is a black trans woman. This is a death sentence to my child.
Thank you.
I am queer and I missed my own child. There are trans people hiding in plain sight every day.
Thank you, Dr. Lulu.
Gender identity is a personal sense of self. It's not a chromosomal thing.
Thank you, Dr. Lulu. Thank you.
Hi,
I'm giving you all a minute. Anybody that gets 30 seconds gets a gold star. Go for it.
Good afternoon. I'm Danielle Bonanno. I'm President Emerita of Athens Pride and Queer Collective, which is the leading nonprofit advancing the lives of queer people in Northeast Georgia. I came here all the way today to oppose this bill. This discriminatory anti-trans bathroom bill forcing students into facilities based on birth sex, not identity. The tragic death of Next Benedict, resulting from bullying that escalated in a school bathroom, is just an example of the violence transgender students face under such policies. This isn't about protection. This bill is about exclusion, creating fear among those seeking to learn and live in peace. Transgender children, more often victims than perpetrators, are put at risk, not protected. HB 936 contradicts equality, dignity, and respect, teaching that discrimination is okay. It risks costly legal battles and educational resource diversion. This bill will harm our children, divide our communities, and move Georgia backwards. I urge you to make history by standing against this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. We've got Hudgens, Scare, Otero, and Baker up next if y'all want to get lined up and ready to fire. Bentley Hudgens.
Good afternoon. Thank you for letting us speak on this bill. My name is Bentley Hudgens. I am the Georgia State Director of the Human Rights Campaign. And on behalf of more than 3 million members and supporters nationwide, I urge you to reject this bill. According to an FBI report in the United States from 2018 to 2022, we saw an increase in reported hate crimes from 8,492 to 13,346 in 2022. And according to an article released earlier this year by NBC, I'm happy to share this with you. There is data showing that schools are becoming more and more common places for hate crimes to occur. I just wanted to make it very clear that when we give light and space to anti-trans rhetoric and bills, it causes a loss of human life, of kids' lives.
Thank you, Bentley. Thank you. Judy and Chris Scare?
Yeah, I'm Chris.
Chris.
Always happens. I oppose this bill. It is not going to protect trans children. I have a 24-year-old who doesn't go to school. But I just want to be here to oppose it because it is not helping protect children. And I also want to point out that it adds unneeded administrative load to the teachers. They have to now decide what and enforce which bathroom a child goes to. It's unnecessary, it's not needed, and there's a room full of people here that you offered, if you want to hear stories, that we would be glad to all stay here and talk to you afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming here. Otero, Baker, Frew, and Escudera is next.
My name's Kristen Baker. I thank you for your time. I'm the Public Affairs Manager at Feminist Women's Health Center. We are a reproductive justice organization in Atlanta. Reproductive justice is a multifaceted framework, and one key tenet is being able to raise your family in a safe and healthy environment without fear that they will be purposefully harmed, killed, or harassed. HB 936 will invite abuse and harassment of trans students in our schools. It would threaten trans students' safety and well-being by forcing them to use facilities inconsistent with their identities and appearance. Trans and non-binary people have had higher rates of bladder infections because they often choose to hold it rather than to endure the embarrassment and safety risk of going to the bathroom. The fundamental premise of this bill, that the state must protect people from trans people in bathrooms, is wrong. In fact, it's completely backwards. I know how important the rights of parents are to this legislative body. HB 936 would threaten families' abilities to keep their children safe and healthy and encourage a culture of fear, misunderstanding, and violence towards transgender students. I urge you to vote against this bill.
Thank you. Ms. Frew?
Yes. Hey, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm here because I have a personal connection to this issue. I have someone very close to me, a child who is transgender. And like Kim said, these things happen. That's life. Life's complicated. You don't expect things. Representative Daniels, I saw you had your baby in your arms coming up the elevator today. You never know what you're going to get, right? How many people in this room are left-handed, just by a show of hands? About 13% of the population right now is left-handed. And there are 40 genes that we have discovered that are related to why someone is left-handed. You go back to 1900, only 2.5% of the population was left-handed. Why was that? Because it was from the devil. It was evil. It was something that was inculcated over centuries. And it became part of what people would do in schools. They would literally hit children's hands through the 1960s and tell them that they were wrong if they were left-handed. Why are we making the same mistakes over and over again? The reason we're here is for two reasons. It's because we don't understand. We're afraid, and that's natural, right? Like, I was afraid too, you know? But on top of it, the other thing is we're here because of money. There are moneyed interests that are driving an agenda, and I'm a former United States staffer.
Thank you,
And
Ms.
I know my way around politics too.
Thank you, Ms. Fruit. Thank you. Inculcate, word of the day. I like that. That was good. Escadera, Mells, and Griffin. Escadera? Escalera.
Good evening, Council, Committee. My name is Aubrey Escalera, and I graduated from Georgia School. And growing up, especially being trans, it was something that we couldn't disclose of. Not only that, going to the restroom was very uncomfortable. We never felt safe in the men's restroom. I remember the only way that I felt safe was in the nurse's restroom. And that took a time and a toll of us having to just use the restroom. I recall also, you know, before using the restroom, we would only, oh my goodness. It just brings back such traumatic experiences growing up because, like I said, the only time a trans person feels safe is in the, you know, in the restroom that's not, would be, for me personally, was the church's restroom, the nurse's restroom, but also we are scared. We're scared to go to the restroom as it is. We're scared, even as adults, we're scared. The only place that I feel safe is being as far as away from the door, even just to use the restroom. So even when I do my activism and engage in session, I too don't feel safe using the restroom here.
Thank you. Mells, Griffin, Hadley, Thompson is my lineup.
Good afternoon. It's great to be here, and I'm glad you're listening to us all. Now, HB 936 is quite the doozy, but I think we need to clarify a few matters. I'm in opposition to this bill. My name is Brooke, and I'm not attached to any organizations. I'm not an activist. I work in IT, for crying out loud. But when the transgender moral panic reached Georgia, I knew I had to act because, frankly, unfortunately, the author here is not being honest about his intentions. Your author is attached and has connections to the Heritage Foundation and the Manhattan Institute run by Chris Rufo. They've already stated there are goals openly to end transgender presence in the United States by 2025. This faux concern for minors and for children is just that. It's purely an act, and unfortunately this is a stepping stone to escalate towards transgender adults, as we've seen in Florida. Bans on bathroom usage and medical care have been extended to adults.
Thank you, Brooke. Next up, Mr. Griffin. Is he still here with us? Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am Mike Griffin. I'm the Public Affairs Representative of the Georgia Baptist Mission Board, and we support this legislation for a number of reasons. We do support it from a biblical perspective. We do believe that everyone is created in the image of God, male or female. We support it from a common sense perspective. It makes sense that biological males should not be in private spaces with biological females or vice versa. There's a fairness perspective. It's simply not fair for girls or boys to be put in a compromising, embarrassing situations when they don't have any choice over that. I also work in child protection policy with the Georgia Baptist Mission Board. Did 7 classes last year on this. Ministry Safe, I work with them. Greg Love from Texas, and he mentioned that now child sex abuse is the calls now range about 52% are peer-to-peer. And in that 52% peer-to-peer sex abuse, 35% of those cases, those calls that were made known, took place in restrooms and locker rooms. And so we need to be working harder at keeping those spaces safe. We already had a situation happen in 2018 here where a 5-year-old was molested in a bathroom.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin.
When that change took place. And ADF has other cases where folks were,
Thank you.
they were saying they were trans, but they were not, but they used that as an opportunity to go in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, if those in the audience, please keep your comments to yourself, or we'll refrain from having any more speakers. Up next, Hadley, Thompson, and Odin. Go for it.
My name is Jennifer Hadley, and I oppose this bill. I have 3 kids in Georgia public schools, including a son. He is a stinky, awkward teenage boy. He's full of energy and testosterone. And this bill would force him to go to the bathroom in the girls' bathroom. That would be such a deeply awkward situation for all parties involved. It would out my son to anyone who didn't know he was trans, because you don't know it to look at him, how he moves. He's such a boy. And it would also violate the spirit of this single gender bill and this local control that I keep hearing about that is very important. Gender identity is incredibly complex, and school systems have policies in place, and bills like this that are trying to just paint everything with a big brush contribute to the hostile environment that is doing irreparable damage to our kids. I am asking y'all to please vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. Right at 1 minute. Impressive. Thank you. Ms. Thompson.
This is Next Benedict. That has been mentioned before, so I'm not going to add to that conversation. Now dead. For my friend, my child transitioned in high school before hormone therapy was banned. His transition was life-changing, and he's thriving. He wore a buzz cut, grew a beard, and spoke with a voice deeper than his father's. How would you, or more importantly, the parents of a school-age female, have responded seeing him come out of the woman's bathroom? You would not be able to differentiate him from a genetic male, nor would a parent or teacher. Who is going to keep him safe from an avenging parent? We have been to the ropes many, many times, speaking to legislators to oppose bills that harm these children. We walk away feeling disrespected and dismissed. Some of the questions that have been given to us: what are the sex organs of your child at birth? Referring to an 8 to 10-year-old who just left the ropes. Does she have a penis or a vagina? Can she get pregnant? I just wanted to be a pirate when I was a kid. I'm glad my mom didn't cut my leg off.
Thank you, Ms.
Is it
Thompson.
any wonder my friends do not feel safe bringing their children here? Transgender children are not a threat in schools or elsewhere.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. All right, guys, we're in the home stretch. I got Cameron, Odin, Mason, Goodwin. Y'all are with the same organization.
Cameron had to leave, so I can step up there.
Oh, I love you, brother. You saved me a minute. Mason, go for it.
I got you. I'll just be real quick. My name is Mason Goodwin. I'm with the Georgia Youth Justice Coalition. We represent students about the K-12 higher education system. I know there's been a lot of testimony from a lot of parents about the concern with their specific kid. A lot of this policy of what's already placed in schools, and so we don't think this is necessary. This is a solution, looking for a problem. And so what I'd ask, because there's probably the votes to get this out of the committee, is just that cause of action clause is removed from the bill, so we don't have issues where, for example, I wasn't the best kid in school, and if you told me this law was put in place, I'm grabbing that bathroom place, I'm making a beeline to the girls' bathroom because I think that's personally funny, right? And under this bill, you would be creating a cause of action for having a troublemaker like me in your school. So we just ask that that piece is removed. I'll close there. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Mason. Under a minute. Beautiful. Winner, winner. Come on up.
Hey there. Thank
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. So my name is Chelsea Thompson, and I am General Counsel at Frontline Policy. I'm here to share our support for this piece of legislation on protecting children's spaces, and I want to say thank you to Representative Bonner for sponsoring this bill and addressing this issue. The biological dissimilarities between males and females are undeniable, and recognizing and respecting these disparities is crucial. Having separate facilities for males and females, such as bathrooms, locker rooms, and changing rooms, is essential for ensuring the privacy and safety of our children in Georgia. The presence of biological males in female designated spaces and females in male designated spaces can compromise the sense of security and privacy that our children rightfully expect and deserve in Georgia. Supreme Court, via my decision, as well as Title IX, respect the real physical differences between males and females and require that the government protect students' privacies in showers, restrooms, locker rooms, and changing facilities. And I also want to make clear this bill is not about gender identity or the like. It is about biological sex that cannot be denied and keeping our children safe in separate spaces. 8 to 10 other states have passed similar bills, and we hope that Georgia can do the same. Thank you for your time, and we ask that you support HB 936.
Thank you. 2 more speakers, and Frutch and Arthur. Anybody? Bueller? All right. Well, here's what we're going to do. We are 15 minutes over time, but what I wanted to do was do that intentionally because I wanted to make sure all of you who have came down to your capital here to share your story, it's meaningful, it's impactful. We are grateful for that. We are going to transition on to our full committee hearing at this time and continue to work on this bill and hear from folks in the interim. So thank you for coming down. What I'm going to do now is go ahead and adjourn the meeting of the subcommittee, and we will transition into full committee with the chairman leading here pretty soon. So meeting is adjourned, and with that, Mr. Chairman, I will give the mic over to you. 5-minute recess. Go use the restroom if you need to. Trying to brevity here, you know. Brevity is the...
All right, members, come on in and have your seats. Visitors, come on in, please. Have your seats. Let's see if we can begin. Members, thank you for your good efforts in subcommittees. I've noticed an improvement in attendance and questions and helping to improve bills. So I want to point that out. A lot of times I think leaders get criticized for only getting on to us, but I want to point out I've seen a lot of good work and a lot of good questioning and making bills better that we are trying to pass. Let's call this meeting to order then of the full committee here at this time. And I'm going to switch the agenda up some due to some bills that have passed in subcommittee today. Let me see, we're going to add HB 1221, HB 1186, and HB 822. And I believe all of those members that are presenting are here. So I'm going to kind of just randomly go through the agenda today. Chairman Chokas, I'm going to ask you if you would begin this meeting in prayer for us. And what number are you down there? 28? Gotcha.
28. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would you bow your heads, please? Oh, Lord, please give us the strength and necessary wisdom to fulfill our responsibilities for the people of this great state of Georgia. Please give our chairman and members of the committee the discernment and wisdom, justice, and moderation that we should use for us to move forward for our children. Give us safe travels as we return home this weekend, hopefully. In Jesus' name we pray. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Let me just lay a little groundwork, committee members, if I can. We've been able to secure this room for a few more minutes as we're starting up right now, but we also have a cutoff. As we know about crossover, we also have a cutoff of the clerk's office trying to deliver bills to them for them to record those bills. So I'm going to ask you to be precise about your questioning so that we can get through these bills and do justice to the people that have been working so hard. Audience, thank y'all for your work with us. I have seen it with many of these members, those in the audience, and communicating your needs to them. And with that, I'm going to start with the first one I called today, which is HB 1221. And Tyler Paul Smith, Chairman Smith, had come and presented. I know he is presenting in another committee right now, so we've asked our own Representative Cox to present this bill. Be aware now, committee, this was presented in subcommittee and policy an hour ago, and I believe passed unanimous. Was that correct? And passed unanimous. But if you would explain the bill to full committee, Representative, let me cut your mic on. Gotcha.
You may want to cut it off. I'm just kidding. Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, committee. As we just heard previously, about an hour ago from Chairman Smith, this is HB 1221, which is also LC 491849S. And as Chairman Smith had gone through, he went through the details, which I'll hit those points as well. Line 11 and 12 is pretty much what this topic's about. It's Boundless Opportunities for Georgia Students Act. It gives those kids a chance and the parents an opportunity and the community an opportunity to do what's best for these kids. So if we'll go into line 30, as was previously discussed, it requires that enrollment of any student under the code section for this ensuing school year shall be completed between April 15th and June 15th of each year. In line 32, provide for how school capacity to enroll additional students shall be determined. And then line 33, authorize local units of administration to decline to provide transportation to students seeking to enroll under the code section. And then D, assure non-discrimination on the basis of sex, race, religion, or national origin. The additional change was in 39. As you can see, marked out lines 37, 38, and 39, and then added was subject only to approval of the enrolling student and the local unit of administration in which the student seeks to enroll. And then lastly, lines 43 through 49, beginning on July 1st of 26 and continuing thereafter, if a local unit of administration enrolls a student pursuant to paragraph 1 of the subsection requires that student to pay tuition, the amount of tuition such local unit of administration may charge to such student shall not exceed the total revenues less federal revenues less state revenues per full-time equivalent student for the local unit of administration that enrolls such student, provided, however, that tuition shall not be required for a student if each student is eligible for free or reduced price lunch. So that is the changes to this bill, and I appreciate favorable support in it. And any questions, Chairman?
Okay, and before I take questions here, I noticed in the subcommittee members, you were taking liberty of asking multiple questions back to back to back. Remember, when you do that, and if I allow that, you're taking a question away from one of your peers. So ask your most important questions here that you need answered. Number 17, who is that? Representative Evans.
Chairman, thank you for bringing this bill. So I want to say thank you for those of you that worked on this bill, especially the part about not penalizing the low-income schools that are, or low-wealth schools, you know, that the student might be transferring from. And so I'm just glad that that issue was addressed.
Well, thank you as well, Representative, for your input, and greatly valued. Thank you.
Representative, I don't see any more questions on this bill. Wait a minute. Number 21, Vice Chair.
Mr. Chairman, at the appropriate time, I'd like to make a motion to pass.
1 second. We do have a question up. They've got same thing. We got one more question I'll entertain, and then we'll let you do that. Number 15, Representative Carter.
Thank you. Thank you, and my apologies for being late.
That's okay.
I need to be a clone today. And I'm just getting a chance to read it. I just want to make sure if I'm reading this, basically what we're doing is allowing students who are in public schools to attend out-of-district public school, and sounds like the funds will follow the student. And if they need special services, those funds are going to go with them. No.
As it relates from public school to public, it gives
public to public.
It gives the kids a chance, right, and an opportunity to do that. As it relates to, and I'll have to confirm this, but as it relates to if there's like any special needs money or things like that, I think that's under a different provision within the state guidelines, but so that's a little unique, separate. But thank you for the question.
Yes, the money stays with the kid, Representative Carter.
Yeah, I think that's
Okay. Number 11, Representative.
Thank you, Chairman. I make it really quick. I think this is a question, because I'm not in the metro, that I don't quite get. We're paying for public school, or we're charging for public school.
I don't
Can anybody answer that part?
I'm not understanding your question.
Well, in the bill, it talks about if a child is transferring to another school, he may have to pay $1,000. I don't know where it is. Is it? Is it on here? We talked about it in subcommittee.
I think I can answer your question. if you'd allow me, Representative,
Sure,
to
yes.
do that.
And I think it's just foreign to me because
There
in
is
this
a
county-
tuition, just like city school systems today. If you're coming out of the county and the city, they can charge tuition. And that's exactly what this bill is doing, that if you leave to go from county to county, you're going to pay an amount of money if the next county takes you. They would normally get it from their local dollars, tax dollars, but they'll charge you a tuition. Now, if you read the last few lines on the bill, if they're free and reduced lunch children, so they filled out the free and reduced lunch, they will not be charged that tuition.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
So you were asking the local question. I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Who's number 4? Representative Howard?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Cox. For this bill, I do have some questions, some apprehensions about the bill, especially when it comes to enrollment, provide how the school capacity enrollment. That's pretty clear. But there may be other reasons why students may be refused other than capacity. And the other piece that I'm concerned about is that on the transportation piece, allow local units of administration on line 33 to decline to provide transportation to students seeking to enroll under this code. I have a concern about that because most students in the lower 25 percentile probably won't have that means of transportation to move from Richmond County to Columbia County. So that's just a concern I have, and it's a pretty deep concern.
Okay, thank you for your comment.
All right, I believe that exhausts our questions. Vice Chair, what is the will of the group?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to pass.
Do I have a second? All right, Representative Townsend, we will vote then. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Bill carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on. I believe, Vice Chair, we're going to put you down as at 1186, HB 1186, and be prepared for both while you're down there so we can move. I know you have 2 that we're talking about today. Let's start with 1186. Vice Chair, please. Read your LC number, please, and then you've got the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Here to present House Bill 1186. This is LC 491671. I believe
Gotcha.
a majority of the committee was probably in subcommittee about an hour ago when we talked about this and had a good discussion. I'll sort of direct my comments to those that weren't here. So the foundation of really all of life is kind of measuring performance, and we want to do that in a way that's easy, simple, and transparent to understand. And so we currently measure that, but we measure it according to 4 or 5 different buckets. And so what this bill does on line 15 is say it adds the word single numerical score 0 to 100. That number shall be reported at a school level and school system level to parents. And then the final page of the bill, lines 20 to 27, talk about where that information would be posted on the school website or district website. We had a good bit of discussion. That number is prepared by GOSA in consultation with DOE, who has the data. GOSA is publishing this information, and there was some discussion around a couple topics. One, the calculation itself, that's handled by the experts, right? We're not going to try to dictate that in this bill here. We're going to let them calculate it, but we're going to ask for a single score so that hardworking parents can say, okay, that's the score. They don't have to hunt and peck and calculate it themselves. We don't want outside organizations trying to calculate it themselves. There was some discussion around the calculation itself. Should it remain consistent year over year? And then we had some discussion. I know Representative Wilkerson, you had some thoughts in regards to the underlying data feeding that single score, should that be made available too? And there's nothing that prohibits that in this bill. DOE can say, here's your single score, and here are all the components that make that single score up. Really, the objective with this legislation is just to say, hey, we want to give parents, families, and students one score to measure both good and bad. We want to know if schools are doing well. We want to pat them on the back and learn from them and do what they're doing. And schools that need some help, we want to figure that out also and come alongside them and build them up. But unfortunately, we're going to be flying blind in some respects if we don't have a single, easy to understand, transparent score.
Great. Thank you, Vice Chair. And I'm going to begin with the numbers that I saw first. Here they come, too. So, number 24, Representative Maynard, is that you?
Yes, thank you, Chair. First question, I think, was answered during subcommittee, so I no longer have a friendly amendment because, to my understanding, on line 14, when it says the office, that is GOSA, and so since some entities in the state may be using data from GOSA, that will still remain so. They can still use the same framework that they currently have. I do support the bill. Thank you for coming to me with the bill initially and improving on what I initially tried to start to do. And the reason why it's so important, I just want to say for the public, as a mom, I knew to go to the GOSA website, but right now what is happening, parents throughout the state of Georgia may not be aware of the GOSA website. So this makes it much more transparent for parents to really understand a grade for their particular school so they can make necessary adjustments. And we just had the bill that was just passed. So if a parent were to say, you know what, I don't think this is the best school for my child, I'm going to go to this school. So I appreciate the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Mayor.
Number 15, Representative Carter.
Thank you. Okay, and I was just asking because I couldn't remember the rating that we used to use, that we used to talk about a few years ago.
CCRPI.
Yeah, CCRPI.
Yep.
Thank you. I was having a senior moment. Okay, so is this replacing? Is this something in addition? And how will this ultimately be used? And will it be universal throughout the state?
Yes to all the above. So we're using CCRPI data to calculate this score. If I'm saying that correct, Mr. Chairman. Yeah.
Okay.
And yes, that score would be using data statewide.
So may a further
Sure.
question?
Yes.
Okay, so since I've been on this committee, the index and the parameters around that index has changed a few times, and a lot of us wasn't really academic. So is it set? Is the CCRPI what's included in that currently set, or are we anticipating changing that so that when we look at the ratings that we're really looking at academics versus kind of some of the social things that was in there?
Yeah, to answer the first question too, recently DOE received a waiver from the feds to report CCRPI on a disaggregated basis, which kind of is what led to this bill that, hey, let's pull it all back together, at least in a format for parents to understand. So yeah, again, using that data, what was, I'm sorry, I was blanking on the second part of your question. What are those components themselves?
Oh, we anticipate, I don't need for you to answer, but I just don't know that it's changed a few times. So I'm just wondering now that we're going to use that as the basis for the scoring. I just want to make sure that we use it, that it's really academic. So when parents are looking at the score, that we know exactly what it is. And as long as it's universal throughout the state, regardless of what's in it, I think
as we
useful.
speak, I think they're working on that calculation right now. What component do you give what weight to? I'm going to let the experts do that. Okay. My only ask of the experts would be, hey, could we kind of keep that calculation consistent for a period of years so that we can compare,
Yes.
3, 4, 5, and yeah.
All right, good job, Representative Carter. You got 5 answers in that one question right there. So you worked me over pretty good on that. We'll go to number 25. Who is 25? All right, Representative.
Chairman Irwin, just to follow up, Representative Hilton, just on that last question, really. Talked about a little subcommittee. Would you be open to something to nail down some kind of sunset in 4 or 5 years to make sure we've kind of set the criteria and consistent criteria that we can put in play.
I'm fine with that as long as we're not handcuffing, what that calculation must be or has to be.
Not at all.
And as long as it doesn't get my DOE friends in a sideways 2-bit on the bill.
I agree. And if you want to ask him, you can. I was just trying to think of something to make sure it doesn't change often and we get something set.
I would suggest maybe we move the bill forward, and then as we do, give us some time for me and folks to huddle up and figure out what that language
Can
would
we
be.
change it in rules or on the floor?
We could, knock on wood, change it on the Senate side. Again, I want to give plenty of time for me to consult with my DOE friends. If they're here, I'm welcome to bring them up. But I don't want to do something that sends it sideways too much.
I'm going to be satisfied with the answer and move on to number 12.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to clarify, on lines 20 through 27, the way I read this is that these scores will be on 4 different places. The office, which is, I guess, GOSA, and DOE will have more of the total, calculation and everything. And then at the school system level, they'll just have a grade. So basically all your detail is going to be at GOSA and DOE, and then the school is going to have a grade. What would help me get closer to saying yes is if the schools actually, and the school system had a reference to where that detailed data is. Because right now, if I pull up a C and I walk in a restaurant, I'm going to walk out, even though it could be because the boxes are too close to the ceiling. So I just want to kind of at that level.
So the beauty is what the schools could do. GOSA is already calculating that and has that detail, so they could simply include a hyperlink back to the GOSA website where a parent, if they'd like, can dig into all that data.
Correct, but if we're going to mandate, and I apologize, if we're going to mandate it, the schools show it, I think we should mandate that they show that link. If we're going to mandate you have to put that score on there, we need to mandate the details. Otherwise, don't mandate either one.
Welcome an amendment.
What do you contemplate, Vice Chair?
Maybe something, is our friend Michael here? I'll defer to my attorney. Yeah.
I can propose language if that's what you're requesting.
Is he number 1? Gotcha.
On line 25, after in such school system, you would insert and links to the public websites provided for in subparagraph A of this paragraph. Those would be links back to the OSA and the DOE sites. And the same language would be inserted after, on line 27, after public website. Or, excuse me, no, after school ratings, you would insert the language and links to the public websites provided for in subparagraph A of this paragraph.
Okay. Yeah. I think that sounds great. Yeah.
That amendment?
Mm-hmm.
Let's cover a few more questions and then wait for a
2 bets.
motion. We can deal with that if you'd like to. All right, number 17. Who is 17? Where is 17?
I think it's Becky.
Becky, Representative Evans? Okay. 24.
I was going to say, at the appropriate time, motion do pass.
It is the appropriate time, so.
Motion do pass, Chair.
Do I have a second? Second. All right, let's talk about an amendment, if we can. We got a motion and a second. Would you like Legislative Counsel to read that and so that we can clarify it correctly for the members?
Line 25 with the amended language would read, well, lines 24 and 25 would read, each school system shall publish on its public website its school system rating and the individual school ratings of each school in such school system. And the amended language would be inserted here, which would read, and links to the public websites provided for in subparagraph A of this paragraph. And then lines 26 and lines 27 would read, each public school that maintains a public website shall publish its individual school rating, and then insert the amended language, and links to the public websites provided for in subparagraph A of this paragraph on such public website.
Okay. We've got a proposed amendment, and I've got, what's that? Yeah, we do. We need a second. We got a second so that we can get ready to vote. 25. Who's 25?
A question, yeah.
All right, we got a couple of questions.
Yeah, will GOSA then provide all the information for the school systems? Otherwise, it could be a nightmare for each individual school trying to come up with everything. If GOSA gathers it, would they be responsible for sending the scores to everybody exactly what to put to post? Because it'd be hard for each individual school to.
Yes, I know they're doing that right now, posting it publicly.
The amendment language, it would simply be including a link. So it would link to the OSA website and link to the DOE website. There wouldn't be really an information exchange.
Okay, so GOSA would be doing all the.
Correct. The locals and the locals would just be responsible for publishing the link to the OSA website and to the DOE website. So that,
okay.
Then an end user could drill down into the information.
Let's take one more question, then we'll vote. Representative Carter.
Just simple, being a little technical here. So the amendment on line 25 says, and links to the sub, and then should and proceed before we go to C?
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that was clarified. Thank you. With that, we're going to vote on the amendment. We have an amendment on the floor. We've got a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. That passes. Okay, now we need to vote on the bill, I believe. Seeing no more questions. What is the will of the committee here? We've already had a motion in a second. Don't let me ask it twice. We've gotten there, guys. So let's vote now on the amended bill is what you're voting on, as amended. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. All right, that passes. Thanks very much. And I'm going to allow you to jump right up because we got to get the ball rolling. Is it 11:22, I believe, Vice Chair?
Yes. And I might, if you want to, I'm going to invite my friend up here just in case I need to phone a friend. 11:22, I'll be reading from LC 491831S.
Okay.
So this bill passed out of subcommittee unanimously a couple days ago. It achieves three things. Number one, it addresses the need for more principals and superintendents in our charter schools. We heard a story of really how when this was all originally set up, it didn't allow for different principals and superintendents for different grade bands. And so there was a school, I think it was our virtual school, it has 13,000 students, it has one principal, which is just, it's a lot. It's too much. And so lines 84 through 95 address that need. The second component of the bill addresses a workforce need for our charter schools. So imagine you're a part-time worker at a charter school. This allows lines 128 through 132 for your student to attend that school if you're a part-time student. You'll recall those in the subcommittee. We added an amendment that you'll find on line 31. We don't want people gaming the system, so we don't want someone working there for an hour and then their kid gets to jump the line we put in there, you got to work there 20 hours a week, measured monthly. We had a question from the audience. Well, what if somebody works there a month, then they leave? Does their kid get to stay there? And I think the answer, and I'll let Bonnie, she can talk about that if she like. The answer to that's no. Again, you can't game the system. So there's protections in there for that. You can't coach the school for a month, leave, and your kid got to skip the line over everyone else. And then finally, the third component you'll find in the last section, I think 3, 4, and 5, in regards to resolving conflict of interest on who can serve on charter school boards locally and then at a state level. So we don't have folks serving on both and getting into trouble there. So with that, I'll yield, Mr. Chairman, for any questions.
Okay. You have a few questions. First one, Representative Carter.
Okay. You know I'm going to
4
ask
or
you
5. I know. I'm ready to go. I love it.
No, the money question, because this bill looks like it has a pretty healthy price tag, and these are our charter and our public charter schools. How is this going to be funded? Does the charter schools have to come up with the additional funding, or is this coming out of state public school dollars, and will all the teachers be certified?
Yes, on the last part. I'm going to let my friend talk about the funding component. Yeah.
These principals would be funded the way that every public school principal is funded, which comes out of state funds. And I don't think there was ever, the issue, Representative, is I don't think there was ever an intent to withhold principals from charters. It's just when the precedent for principal allocation began long before charters were a glimmer in anyone's eye, and so they didn't contemplate that a charter might serve multiple grade bands under a single school code. And so what this bill does is true it up so that a K-8 school pulls 2 principals, just like an elementary school and a middle school would across the street in a traditional format. So it would be funded in the same way that traditional school principals are funded.
Seeing no more questions.
Famous last words.
Number 12, we won't mention his name.
This is going to be quick, Mr. Chairman.
Y'all love to pick me apart. I love my committee.
No,
You
I'm
guys are
trying
great.
to help you
I love
here,
guys.
and I just have a simple question. So, and I know we added the 20 hours per school week there measured monthly. There will be situations where, you do work and then something happens, you don't work the next month. Should this be looked at semester-wise versus monthly? Because I'd hate for someone to start a school and then, and then have to get kicked out and then run into problems. Because, that's my only concern. I'm not a big one, but just something to think about.
Yeah, we ran across this in subcommittee just because there's not a great definition of part-time employment in existing code or in any rules. We came across a few on the Secretary of State's website, so we deferred to Ledge Council about what would be most prudent, because the intent is to define it so that no one is gaming anything and jumping the wait list line. So Ledge Council at the time said 20 hours was measurable, quantifiable, and fair. So that's why we went with that. There's, in short, I don't think there is a perfect way to define it. I understand what you're saying. I don't know if Ledge Council has had any additional thoughts since then, but we would, of course, defer to your genuine wisdom on this.
Ledge Council, I would hope you'd be up at night thinking about my bills, but.
Representative number 24, Townsend? No, ma'am.
This is my first question, I think, for this bill, Chairman. Only thing that I was going to say is, without putting things too much into the bill, is it possible within just the rules and regulations of the individual schools, if someone does anticipate or does use this opportunity, can there be a contract of sorts that says, a disclaimer, if you use this opportunity, these are the conditions of this opportunity. That way they would be less prone to try to game the system and leave, and then we have children being pulled in and out of school. So really just the comment is perhaps we don't need to put too much in the bill because we can solve those problems within a disclaimer on the back end.
And if anything, this is meant to be a recruitment tool to bring more teachers, part-time teachers, into the charter school, with this added workforce benefit.
Okay, we've exhausted the questions. What's the will of the committee?
Make a motion to do pass.
All right, Representative, motion to do pass. Do we have a second? We do have a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Bill
Thank you, Mr.
carries.
Chairman.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
We have a couple of chairmen sitting out in the audience that I want to give an opportunity to come up and present their bills right now. Chairman Leverett, would you come forward to the center mic here, please? We're going to make you sit in a hot seat. I know you've been working quite hard on this bill, and so has the subcommittee.
Subcommittee has too, Mr.
So
Chairman.
appreciate you spending the time over the course of the last couple of weeks doing that. Read your LC number, please.
The LC number I have, Mr. Chairman, is LC 491836S.
Okay. We'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, members of the committee and members of the subcommittee. The chairman is correct. I believe the subcommittee did a good job of sort of engaging with this bill and vetting it for me, and we made a few changes that I think have improved it. So the genesis of this bill was a Wilkes-Lincoln retired educators meeting I went to last year, where one of the members mentioned to me that she thought she was going to be entitled to Social Security and was a little chagrined to find out she was not entitled because the school system she had worked for many years did not withhold. They didn't participate, and that's true of many school systems throughout the state. So talking with Mr. Walker, we sort of came up with a notion that maybe I, as an old school board lawyer, I didn't want to mandate that school systems participate, because I don't know that they can once they've opted out. I think the ability to do that is somewhat limited, but at least provide some transparency and disclosure so employees get some kind of notice where they're told, and they hopefully, if they later forget, they're told again in some period of time, so they know what's going to happen when they retire. And so the bill basically retires that school systems, upon hiring, notify the employees of whether the Social Security is going to be withdrawn, if they're eligible to be included in some plan with coverage for the benefits of Title II of the Social Security Act, and then if they are eligible to be included in any other pension or retirement plan, and if they're eligible to be included in one or more plans, then information regarding those plans. So this would just be, the idea is we're trying not to overburden the system. They could come up with some sort of notice that they could provide to their employees. During subcommittee, and then in section B, we just said that no later than October 1, and at least once every 5 years thereafter, they would provide the current employees with that notice. So we're not making them go back and immediately notify everybody all at one time. It's something they could do gradually over time. And then during subcommittee, there was a motion to also provide that when someone retires or resigns or is terminated, their employment ends for whatever reason, they also be provided a similar notice with respect to whether it was withheld. And we had made an amendment that involved some changes on line 16, but those I think were a bit awkward because the subsequent language of that paragraph really didn't fit with what you would be told at termination or in conclusion of your employment. So Mr. Walker just created a paragraph C, and that's at the end of on lines 26 through 28, which specifically addresses the issue of when you're separated, when you leave employment, you would be told whether the Social Security was withheld. At that point, it doesn't really make sense to tell you what you were eligible for but are no longer eligible for. So we put that in a separate paragraph. So that's the bill. It's intended just to provide some notice and transparency to make sure the employees are aware And if they were aware but forget, they're reminded so that they can make whatever plans they deem appropriate for their retirement and that sort of thing.
In your study, representative of this bill, do you know how many school systems do not take out, withhold Social Security?
I have known that, Mr. Chairman, and I think the number was something like 60, or I think GAE had that figure because they're looking into this issue as well. And so it's a substantial number of them that do not participate.
And
But
I
I can't remember the
believe
exact number.
our largest school system in the state is one of those.
That's
with
my
the most
understanding.
students. So, thank you for this and bringing it to our attention. There were many employees for me that didn't know if we did or if we didn't. So it's good to communicate. We'll take a question or two.
You kind of answered my question.
Okay, fantastic. Oop,
Just at the right time, Mr. Chair.
there you go. We'll entertain one question from Representative Cox before the right time.
If you would have chosen me first, I would have been at the right time.
Okay.
Apparently, I'm not at the right time.
It is. You were the second right time. How does that sound? So go ahead, Representative.
I make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Bill carries. Thank you, and I'm sorry you had to sit there through Vice Chair's information.
That's
Mr.
all right.
Chairman.
That was a stirring presentation. I learned a lot from it. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the committee.
We're going to keep rolling. Chairman Carpenter, if you would come up.
So, if you don't mind, I'm going to do it from here, and I'll explain to you why this is.
We can make that happen. First of all, if you would, Chairman, read your LC number for me.
Thank you very much. House Bill 822, LC 4918, 42S. Is that what we have?
That's exactly it. You have the floor.
All right, thank you. And so I'm standing up today because I left the house this morning at 5:30, and my wife forgot to separate my shirts from my 17-year-old son's shirts. So if I sit down, this shirt may bust open like Superman. So I'm going to stand up from the podium today to present this legislation, and I appreciate your understanding with that. So this is about the fourth iteration of this legislation. We presented it in subcommittee, made some changes, submitted it again or presented it again in subcommittee, passed out yesterday, and then we've actually made some changes because in the transition we lost some language along the way. So even if you've heard this in subcommittee, there is some changes in front of you. But basically at the end of the day, it looks to update our sex education in the state of Georgia to make it medically accurate, age appropriate, to discuss consent, and I'll go over the language that Frontline provided us on that, to update from AIDS to HIV. Obviously, the last time this code was updated, I think, was 1988. Magic Johnson in 91 changed the dynamic of that, and so I think HIV is much more appropriate in code than AIDS. And then there's some cleanup language on line 45 and 46. Doesn't really change that. And then we added on 61 through 65 some language that Frontline provided us as well to make sure that we, as a state, we're focused on teaching abstinence and how that is the best route for kids to prevent STIs, etc. And so without going, it's been a long day, I know, so if you have questions, I'd love to answer them. It's a pretty simple bill in the language. Obviously, it's a big issue to discuss.
Chairman, thank you, and thank you again. Just like the last chairman that was here, good job of vetting this bill with the committee and the committee working with you. I appreciate that. And then ultimately with some of the people in the audience. So thank you there. We'll start with number 24. And that is Ms. Representative Maynard.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the bill. Just for the purpose of the full committee, we talked about how important abstinence education was, but also that we have so many. Georgia has a unusually high HIV and AIDS rate, and so the fact that we would educate our children on those facts is highly important. And as the representative just said, not only are the rates in Georgia high for HIV/AIDS, now we have a syphilis outbreak, and that was just reported in the AJC. I think this bill is very important to protect our kids. Thank you for bringing it.
Yes, and so as a father of four, obviously I understand the challenges with sex education, but I also realize that we have two parents at my house, and then over a third of the households don't have two parents. And so the schools are going to have to address some issues that I think are uncomfortable for us to talk about, even in here, much less with our own kids. And abstinence is by far the best way to go. But 90% of people don't make it all the way don't make it to marriage before having sex. So to dig our head in the sand and not discuss stuff, other things, I think is a mistake.
We'll jump to number 15, Representative Carter.
Thank you.
I've watched you ask a lot of questions in here, Miss Carter, or Representative Carter. You really vet this stuff.
Listen, I just want to say thank you for bringing this piece of legislation. And Chairman, at the appropriate time, I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you, Representative Carter. We understand. You shocked us there. That's true. Number 22.
Once again, I'm second. But hey, I want to say something. You're in the food industry, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so more appropriate than Superman in the shirt is opening a can of biscuits. Let's make sure that doesn't happen. Does that work?
That's right.
Appreciate the bill. It's a great bill.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
We're going to take one more and call it quits or move on. 26. Who's 26? Daniel?
That's me. Thank you. Thank you for the bill. I do still have some questions. I know you've changed the language a little bit, but really outside of my concern about medically accurate, we've talked about that. Can you give me some examples of what the reputable medical authorities that you reference would be?
Yeah, I mean, I would think an OBGYN would be a pretty high on the list.
Okay.
As a man that's had 4 kids and the same OBGYN, we trust him with these type matters.
Okay, so on line 39, it talks about age-appropriate medically accurate information concerning human biology, conception, and pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell me what the medically accurate definition of when a heartbeat begins would be under your definition of a medically accurate?
When a heartbeat?
Yeah, because it says conception and pregnancy is now going to be
So when you hear a heartbeat, it's
accurate.
a heartbeat, right?
Well, there's some disagreement on that under your reputable medical authorities. is what
Yeah,
I'm
I mean, I
asking.
understand what you're getting at. I think, I mean, at the end of the day, a heartbeat's a heartbeat. This body, passed legislation on that a few years ago. Clearly, that's an important issue for me and a lot of my colleagues. But I don't think this really gets into that, to be honest with you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, if you will. The second thing, I was a little concerned about this because currently in code, it's my understanding that each individual local school system has the ability to determine whether or not they want to teach comprehensive sex ed. And if we codify this, that would actually take some of that local control away from those school systems that choose not to.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think as long as it's medically accurate and age appropriate, that the locals will control the messaging. And it's made up of parents, school boards, hopefully doctors. So I don't think that changes this.
So you believe the local government should determine what's age appropriate and not the parent?
I think the school system should.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, don't you think your school system should?
No, I think the parent should.
And there's an opt-out option for parents if they don't like the material.
All right. Let's go back to Representative Carter. I think now's the time.
I would like to move that we do pass HB 822 LC 491842S.
Great. Do we have a second? We have a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign.
No.
That bill carries. Do we want to ask more questions is what we're saying? I see.
No. I just said
Okay.
no.
She said that as well.
Oh, you're saying no as well. Yeah, got you. Your bill carries.
Thank you, guys.
very
I
much.
appreciate you very much. I know it's been a long day. I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Did 3. Let's see. Let's go on to our last one. Let's see. We've got HB 1027, Representative Bethany Ballard. Representative Ballard, are you prepared to present? Let me cut that on at the table. I believe you're good to go. Read your LC number for me, please.
I've got LC 491835S.
Gotcha. You have the floor.
Okay. What this bill is, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and this bill will require that computer science, which is literacy for the 21st century, become a graduation requirement in our schools. What this bill does, it beginning in the 2027-2028 school year, it will require that one class of computer science or a CTAE course with embedded computer science become mandatory for graduation. This requirement could be taken anytime between 8th grade and graduation, and the class can be taken in a traditional classroom setting, a blended learning environment, or in an online virtual class. For example, GTRI does some virtual education in this area. This bill does not increase the number of credit hours for graduation. The computer science class will take the place of certain math classes, certain science classes, a CTAE class, or an elective requirement. Just a couple of things to note. Last school year, the 2022-2023 school year, all middle schools were required to have an exploratory class in computer science. This school year, the 2023-2024 school year, it's required that 50% of the high schools in a district offer computer science. And next school year, all the districts are required to offer the course. So the curriculum is in place, the classes will be in place, but we want to start in 2027 making it a graduation requirement.
Okay, Representative, thank you. I have received a lot of communication that this is needed. I will tell you, within our schools on the computer science end from the communities out there with their children. So thank you for that and for attention to this matter. Let me open it up, the floor to questions on computer science here. Number 28.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the appropriate time.
Believe it or not, just hold 1 second. We got one other question, number 25.
I'll say, no, I like your bill, thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick question, and I don't have the list in front of me. I should know, and I don't. I apologize. Does this not take the place, concurrently go with the other, like the AP computer science course a lot of kids take, and I guess that one's
So
not
I believe,
mandated.
if I remember what my child did, he had the introductory class and then moved on to the AP class.
Okay.
So this would be that introductory class.
Then if
But
they want to go further, they could.
Yes,
Perfect.
yes.
Vice Chair, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think our current posture, do we have a motion to pass? Are we open to amendments right now?
But we haven't yet. Okay, let's see. And what is your number? This is we're going to go to you then.
Oh, good.
This is the appropriate time, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to move that House Bill 1027 LC 491835S receive the due pass designation from our committee.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. We have a second. Now you can have it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to my seatmate and fellow vice chairman. And I'll tell you, this committee's letting you off a lot easier than they did me, but I think they like you better.
They're just tired.
Yeah, almost there. I'm going to pass the mic to my I call him my personal lawyer at this point, but Michael, I've been working on amendment with you, and it's a little bit more complex for me to spat off all at once. If you would offer that up to the committee.
This amendment, as I understand it, is to remove the graduation requirement component of the bill.
Yes.
If you wanted to remove the provisions in the bill that require the offering of the computer science course as a graduation requirement, then the following amendments would need to be made. On line 3, between the words A and computer science, insert full credit. On line 4, we would delete the words a high school graduation requirement and replace those words with the word offered. On line 6, we would delete everything after areas, semicolon. On line 7, we would delete at the beginning of line 7, exception, semicolon, to provide for such exception, semicolon. Those would be deleted. On line 64, at the end of line 64, after the word shall, we would add, insert offer. Line 65 would be deleted. Line 66 would delete accelerated career diploma to complete. Those words would be deleted. On line 73, at the end of the line, after the semicolon, we would insert and. On line 76, we would delete at the end of line 76 the semicolon and the and replace that with a period. We would delete line 77. On line 80, after full credit course, the word required would be deleted and replaced by provided for. On line 104 on page 5, similar adjustment would be made. The word required on line 104 would be deleted and replaced with provided for. And I believe that would extract the graduation requirement from the bill.
Let's turn this over to Representative. Yeah, I'm sure that can be looked on as a friendly or a not friendly.
Not friendly. It's already in current code that schools offer this. So if we're going to take out the graduation requirement, then this bill wasn't even needed because it's already there in the schools. 100% of the schools next year have to have computer science.
Or have to have the offerings.
Yes.
The offerings of it. Okay.
When the friendly amendment was presented to me earlier in the day, that was not how it was presented.
Let's go to some questions for amendment number 4.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going to ask the author, does that take away the full intent of the bill?
Yes, it does.
Because we were trying to get students prepared for the workforce, and this will be one of the ways that they would be prepared, at least partially prepared, by making it a part of the curriculum. Mm-hmm. So the amendment seems like it would take away that full intent.
Yes.
But you answered my question with your comments.
Thank you.
Let's go, I believe, to 17.
Thank you. I would like to ask the representative that made the amendment, what was the logic behind this amendment?
I think I need a second.
Yeah, what we thought. That we were just checking that. Let's do this. We've got an amendment that's on the floor,
Second.
so we can discuss it. Do we have a second?
Second.
We do have a second. Okay. Let's have some more discussion as we go here. Now, ask the question again.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to ask the representative that proposed the amendment for him to talk about why you proposed it. Yeah, what's the logic behind it?
I think, let me answer that. There is the crowded space in graduation for students. They're so prescriptive to graduate, meaning that how many sciences, how many maths, how many language arts, how many PEs, how many courses they have to take to graduate. This isn't adding to it, though. What it is doing is it's squeezing down that opportunity of anything extra that they might want to do while they're in school because it's so prescriptive. Does that answer your question?
But I thought that in the bill it talked about that they would have choices. Like, I mean, it doesn't have to replace like just math. It could replace math or an elective. It gives flexibility to a school system about what they make required and
Correct.
Yeah.
And the bill does state that. But again, you would have to be a scheduler at a high school to understand how difficult it is for students to work in any extra. And this is quickly trimming that opportunity down too. But that was, I believe, the intent of the representative that had discussed this. Is not in the room with us at this time, so he discussed it with some others of us.
I see. Okay.
When he discussed, if I may, when the representative who was going to make the original amendment, what he had told me this morning was that he was still going to keep it as a graduation requirement. It would just take the place of an elective. But he never intended to remove it as a graduation requirement.
Let's go to 15.
Thank you. And Representative, thank you for adding that, because I agree, technology, computer science is important, and I think you just said that next school year, all the schools will be required to have it, right?
As an elective.
As an elective. But I think to jump from the first year where it's offered as an elective to requiring it as...
There'll be 3 more years.
Yeah. For me, my bottom line with the concern with adding it as a requirement. Now, maybe 3 years from now, I'll be retired and thinking differently. But I guess I just don't want to chance reducing the opportunity for some students to graduate because they didn't take
I do have some some notes on that. Hang on, let me find it. This has been put in 8 states currently have the graduation requirement. And the best data we have is from South Carolina. They've had it the longest, so we've got better data. In South Carolina, the graduation rates did not go down when they added this requirement. In fact, they went up from 82.2% to 83.3%. And the incidence of young women interested in further computer science courses, later in high school, more advanced courses, and on into college. In Arkansas, when the law went into effect, female participation grew 123% among our young women.
I'm still concerned for Georgia.
I understand, but one thing, if this is not put in, we will be the only southeastern state without the graduation requirement in computer science.
We're going to go on to number 2. Number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Got me?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thanks to the author of the bill. So I really struggle when I hear our comments, and we have to start thinking of being innovative and looking forward to the future. We just came out of a tough period of COVID, and we understood what our kids went through during that time, just having the skills to be able to deal with taking coursework virtually and not having all the resources there. And I think as we continue to build our toolkit, we have to do something different. And I think this is different. We have to think of what our workforce is going to look like today. I mean, it's a tool that's required. So it's not, I think we're challenging our kids, and our kids are smart. I mean, they have the support that they need. They have some of the guidance, and they want to be challenged. So I think it's a good bill. I think we should look at the merits of it, and as we make that decision, think about what other ways we can support opportunities for our kids.
Okay, let's keep going. Number 25 again.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just real quick, thanks for this bill. Question regarding if we make a graduation requirement like your original proposal, I don't think the years are set up. Normally we would start it in the 9th grade year. So whenever then 4 years out. So whenever it would take effect, it would kind of gradually go
Yeah, so
up
the
or
first
something
class
like
will be 31.
that. Okay. So all the years line up and everything. Okay, thank you.
If I've got my math right.
Number 24.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just urge our committee to support the bill, and I'll tell you why we should support the bill. There are some schools in my district where only 2 and 3% have reading proficiency. Goldman Sachs did a study saying in 10 years there are going to be 300 million jobs lost to artificial intelligence. If you have students today that are not able to read, they are the category of people that are not going to have jobs due to artificial intelligence. This not only gives an opportunity for the kids that are not able to read. Maybe they may excel at computer science and they have a chance of having a degree in this technology-driven world that we're about to enter. I do think the author has been quite comprehensive, because one of the things that I liked about it is on line 64, it says beginning in 2027. So there's ample time to ramp up to this. And one thing that we do know about a school system is they are resilient. And so when we're thinking about how does this look from a practical sense, I think
Representative Maynard, where's the question?
The question is, please support the bill. Will you please support this bill?
Thank you. And I will say, Representative Maynard, this is not all of my bill. This I met 5 or 6 times with the Georgia Department of Education on this bill, and they had heavy input into this bill.
Representative Parrish.
Thank you, Chairman. You had me sold that we will be behind every other state in the Southeast. We can't do this. We cannot let our children fall behind in computer science, and that's just the bottom line. We can't. Thank you, Chairman.
Representative Wilkinson.
Thank you. Line 64 says beginning in 27-28 school year, you require all students. It doesn't say students starting that year. So basically, if you're a senior, would this not apply to you? Because it doesn't.
I would be open to an amendment, saying, clarifying that language that it's the 9th graders of that 27-28.
I'm rapid firing here. That one, and then also, do we have the teachers to do this?
I think by 27-28 we will. There's also there's a blended option, there's a virtual option through GTRI that's applicable, that is allowed in this bill.
Yeah.
Let's keep talking about the First Amendment here. If we've got another one coming, we can deal with that at another time and allow Legislative Council to ponder that one. The last question that I currently see on the board is number 17.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to know, what is the Carnegie unit requirement for graduation?
23.
23. And is it possible that I know for language arts, you can get Carnegie Unit credits in middle school. I mean, would that be possible in this as well?
So this would be sort of akin to like the algebra, because my son, my 8th grader, takes algebra in the 8th grade. It counts toward his graduation requirement, but doesn't count toward his GPA, but it still checks that requirement box.
Okay, so this would apply.
That's why the Department of Education wanted to include the 8th grade year, because it gives that extra layer of flexibility in scheduling for the kids.
Okay, I'm going to call the question, seeing no more questions on here, of the amendment is what we're going to vote on first. Whether or not, as read by Legislative Council, removing the graduation requirement is what we're voting on, the amendment. So I want to make sure you understand what we're voting on. And all in favor of the amendment, say aye. All opposed, say aye. Aye. Okay, the amendment does not carry. Let's now, well, let me ask a number 15.
Okay.
You have a question.
No, thank you, because my heartburn was around the graduation, and if you are conducive to amending the language that in the 3 years forward, that it starts with the 9th graders, so when they graduate in 4 years, I will be open to that.
Can we get that?
Let me go to Representative Wilkerson. I know you haven't touched your microphone down there. Do you want to insert another amendment with a word change? Is that what you were saying a minute ago?
Yes.
Didn't look like you had a lot of confidence in your thought pattern here.
Yeah, I'm rethinking. Yeah, I believe it was line 64, right? We're talking about?
Yeah.
Yes.
If the, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
if the
sir.
intention is for this to become effectively operative for 9th graders in the 27-28 school year, I would recommend that line 64, the school years just be replaced to reflect the years 20, 30, 31. As you indicated, the courses have to be offered starting this coming school year, so that would give that lead up. But the way that it is currently drafted, the graduation requirement would kick in the 27-28 school year. So it would have almost a clawback kind of perspective.
Okay.
So if you change that to 20, 30, 31, then that would give the longer runway to give all the students.
Not that I'm a lawyer or not even play one on TV, but could we maybe say something just to really clarify, beginning with the class of 2031 or something like that to make.
It really would be understood. We write a lot of legislation this way, and since cohorts are a little bit dicey, we don't really refer to classes of particular years.
Do you want to amend line 64 with what Legislative Council said on the years? Does the committee understand the date changes that we have there? Okay. Representative or Legislative Council, you're comfortable with 31? 3031 on line 64.
And line 3 to reflect the same change.
Okay, we have an amendment. Do I have a second? Okay. I'm going to allow a little discussion on this. This is a pretty simple change. Number 22.
This comment can only be in regards to the amendment. True?
True.
Okay, then aye.
Okay. I see nothing else. We're changing the years, which seems to make a lot of sense here in the bill. Representative Ballard, you're good with that? Friendly?
Absolutely.
Or unfriendly? Okay, now let's vote on this amendment. Now we're voting on the amendment as read on line 64, so we're clear on that. All in favor of this amendment, say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. All right, the amendment to line 64 then carries. Let's go back. We had a motion and a second, and I see no more questions. to vote on this bill at this time? Representative Evans, we're going to vote. I'm at that stage right now. We are going to vote today. So what I'd say to you is everybody in favor of HB, let me get the number correct here, 1027, which is LC 491835S, say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. It carries.
Thank you.
There we go. Thank you, Representative. We'll move that bill on. Members, thank you very much. Thank you for your time and effort today and your questioning. I started out patting you on the back. I'm going to tell you, best job so far this year. So thank you in these times. Get you a good rest. Let's hit it hard on Monday. We are adjourned.